Most men do not collapse in one dramatic moment. They decay through small surrenders, repeated so often that weakness begins to feel normal. It is rarely one catastrophic choice that ruins a man. It is the quiet habit of yielding when he should stand firm, escaping when he should endure, reaching for relief when he should remain under tension. That is how strength leaves. Not with noise, but with permission. Each small surrender seems harmless in isolation, a wasted hour, a broken promise, a private indulgence, a moment of weakness no one else can see. But a man is shaped in those unseen moments. Every time he bows to what is lower, something in him loses its edge. His self-respect thins, his focus dulls, his presence weakens. The danger is not pleasure itself. The danger is becoming a man who cannot refuse it. Because once a man loses too many private battles, he begins to carry the face of defeat long before his life outwardly falls apart. That is how erosion begins. Quietly, internally, then everywhere. And this is where most men misunderstand their decline. They search for one habit to blame, one vice to condemn, one weakness to cut out, as if their deterioration came from a single crack in the wall. But a man rarely falls because of one act alone. He falls because his whole way of living has been arranged against strength, poor sleep, constant stimulation, endless scrolling, cheap dopamine, no discipline in the body, no order in the mind, no serious aim to organize his energy around. What looks like one private problem is often the visible symptom of a much deeper disorder. A man does not lose command of himself in one corner of life, while remaining powerful everywhere else. Disorder spreads. When his inner world has no structure, he begins to seek relief instead of meaning. He reaches for stimulation because silence feels empty. He reaches for indulgence because effort feels heavy. He reaches for escape because reality has become something he no longer knows how to confront. That is the real issue. Not one isolated behavior, but a pattern of living that drains force from every level of his being. His attention is fractured. His nervous system is overfed and undertrained. His time is wasted in fragments. And little by little, he is no longer directing his life. He is merely reacting to it. That is what erosion truly is. A man losing the authority to govern his own energy, his own body, his own mind, and his own days. And the first thing a man loses is not muscle, not health, not even opportunity. It is respect for himself. That is the invisible price. That is where the damage begins. Most consequences do not appear at once in the body, so he tells himself nothing serious has happened. He still looks functional. He still goes through the motions. He still speaks, works, laughs, answers messages, and carries on. But inwardly, something has been reduced. After enough surrender, he no longer feels clean in his own conscience. He no longer trusts himself under pressure. He begins to understand, in a quiet and humiliating way, that his word to himself has become weak. And once that happens, the injury runs deeper than pleasure ever reached. Because self-respect is not built by self-image. It is built by evidence. A man respects himself when he knows he can rely on his own command. When he says no and means it. When he makes a decision and stands inside it. But every private act of surrender sends another message into the mind. It says, when the test came, you bent. When discomfort appeared, you escaped. When desire pressed on you, you gave away the throne. That message does not disappear. It settles into identity. Then, everything else begins to change. Focus becomes harder to hold. Long work feels heavier. Discipline starts to feel artificial. Even silence becomes uncomfortable, because silence leaves a man alone with the truth of what he is becoming. This is why the deepest loss is not the indulgence itself. It is the growing suspicion that you are no longer a man who can carry his own standard. And when a man loses credibility with himself, his strength begins to rot at the root. That is why desire becomes strongest in a life that has lost its inner center. Many men think they are defeated because temptation is too powerful. That is not the full truth. Temptation often wins because there is too much emptiness behind the eyes, too much disorder in the soul, too little direction in the day. A man does not keep reaching for cheap pleasure only because he is driven by appetite. He reaches for it because something in him is underfed at a deeper level. He is bored, but not truly rested. He is lonely, but does not know how to stand in solitude. He is restless, but has built no structure strong enough to contain that restlessness. So he looks for intensity, because intensity feels like life when purpose is absent. This is what many men never admit. Desire becomes dangerous when it finds a vacant interior. When a man has no serious aim, no demanding work, no discipline in the body, no higher loyalty to shape his choices, appetite begins to rule by default, not because it is noble, not because it is irresistible, but because nothing stronger has taken command. Cheap pleasure grows best in an unguarded life. It fills the space that responsibility, struggle, devotion, and meaning were meant to occupy. A man with a real mission is not free from desire. He is simply less available to be ruled by it. His energy has somewhere to go. His mind has something to serve. His suffering has somewhere to be offered. And that changes everything. Because lust is not only a temptation. Very often, it is the refuge of a life that has gone inwardly empty. And the signs are rarely loud at first. A man does not always look broken when he is losing himself. Often, he still appears normal from the outside. He speaks the same, works the same, laughs at the right moments, keeps moving through his days, but his presence begins to thin. Something in him is less settled, less clear, less rooted. He struggles to remain still in silence. He reaches for distraction the moment the room becomes quiet. His attention is scattered. His mind keeps drifting toward what is easy, immediate, and numbing. He avoids what is difficult, not because he cannot do it, but because he no longer has the inner firmness to stay with it. This is how a man begins to betray himself without announcing it. He cannot go deep into his work. He cannot hold tension for long. He wants change, but builds no structure. He feels guilt, but repeats the pattern. He knows he is living below his standard, yet slowly becomes accustomed to that condition. That is one of the darkest stages of decline. Not open collapse, but adaptation to a lower form of life. You can often see it in the eyes, not weakness in the dramatic sense, but dimness, a loss of sharpness. A man who is no longer fully behind his own gaze. And that is the danger. Decline does not become fatal when it begins. It becomes fatal when a man starts calling it normal. Real strength begins here, not in image, not in posture, not in the performance of masculinity. A man is not strong because he looks hard, speaks loudly, or carries an air of control. Strength begins where self-government begins. It is the ability to remain sovereign over your own impulses, to hold command when desire rises, when discomfort presses in, when the lower part of you asks for immediate relief. That is where manhood is tested. Not in public display, but in private rule. A man of substance is not a man without desire. He is a man who does not hand desire the throne. He feels the pull, but he does not kneel. He is tempted, but he is not owned. That distinction matters, because the world is full of men who can dominate a room and still be ruled by themselves. They appear powerful, but inwardly they are divided. And a divided man cannot carry real weight for long. Self-mastery is what gathers scattered energy and turns it into force. It gives steadiness to the eyes, weight to the voice, precision to action. A disciplined man is not less alive. He is more concentrated. He is no longer leaking himself into every urge, every distraction, every passing appetite. He has learned to keep his fire for what is worthy of it. This is what many men forget. Discipline is not punishment. It is alignment. It is the restoration of rightful order. Your mind was not made to serve impulse. Your body was not made to drag your will around like a captive. There must be a ruler within. And when that ruler is awake, a man no longer lives like a servant to whatever calls him downward. He begins to stand like a king inside his own nature. Then the question becomes simple. How does a man return from disorder without turning the process into another performance? The answer is that recovery begins with order, not emotion, not with dramatic vows, not with self-hatred, not with waiting to feel ready. A man starts to recover the moment he stops negotiating with the weakest part of himself and begins rebuilding structure where chaos has been allowed to spread. First, he cuts off what keeps feeding the cycle. He reduces idle screen time. He removes the triggers he keeps pretending he can manage casually. He stops leaving himself alone for long stretches in a state of boredom, fatigue, and aimlessness. A man who is serious about recovery does not keep placing temptation on the throne and then acts surprised when he bows. Second, he brings the body back under discipline. He sleeps at a proper hour. He trains even when his mood resists it. He eats in a way that restores steadiness instead of intensifying disorder. The body must be taught again that it is not the master. This matters more than most men realize, because a loose body often becomes the doorway to a loose mind. Third, he fills the empty spaces with weight. Real work, real study, real responsibility. Something difficult enough to demand his energy and clean enough to deserve it. Desire becomes far less tyrannical when a man has something greater to carry. And when the urge comes, as it will, he learns not to panic before it. He learns to stand still under it. Urge is not authority. Sensation is not command. The feeling rises, presses, and passes. What destroys a man is not the presence of impulse, but the reflex of obedience. This is how order returns, quietly, repeatedly, through clean actions done without drama. Recovery is not built on inspiration. It is built on standards, repeated until the inner kingdom obeys its rightful ruler again. And this is where a man begins to take his power back. Not in public, not in noise, not in speeches about who he is going to become. The real turning point happens in silence, in the private moments where no one is watching and no praise is coming. That is where a man is either rebuilt or reduced. The world sees results long after it ignores the decisions that created them. But character is forged in those invisible battles. Every time you refuse what is beneath you, you recover a piece of authority. Every time you remain standing under pressure, something in you becomes more solid, more trustworthy, more whole. This is how dignity returns. Not all at once, but choice by choice. A man does not become respectable because he speaks about discipline. He becomes respectable because, when no one is there to witness it, he still refuses to betray what he knows is right. That is where strength becomes real. That is where a lost man begins to return to himself.